Hey everybody, welcome to Cultivating Conversations on Cultivate with Kate. Today I get the honor and privilege of interviewing Cassandra Rubino, who is the creator of Muscles by Plants. Cassandra is saving the world through food and fitness. So please join me in listening in on this conversation on Cultivate with Kate. Everybody, please help me welcome Cassandra Rubino. Hi, Cassandra. Thank you so much for joining Cultivate with Kate. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Excellent. I just want to first say thank you for being so brave enough to be my very first guest on my show. Thank you. Thank you. So
I feel like like audience clapping, like
I know, right? I'll build on the soundtrack, what is it called? I need to learn these terminologies. Whatever is it called? The soundtrack, what is laugh track or clap track? Anyways, we'll build that in. Hopefully my budget will be bigger next time. So thank you again for joining. So, I first, just to introduce you to the world, how I got to know you was through CrossFit Woodland Hills. And so I remember taking one of your classes and I was captivated by the way you teach. First of all, for those of you who are just listening and not looking at her right now, and granted, you're only seeing the Zoom version of her from like her head area. And so she is ripped, y'all. She is jacked. She is healthy. She is vegan. She is giving us all the healthy vibes. But, when I took Cassandra's class, what I appreciate about you, Cassandra, is that you are a combination of being like a good disciplinarian, like in the sense where you keep all of us on track, while at the same time you show great compassion, which I appreciate, because sometimes in boot camp situations or CrossFit classes, I hear like people just freaking yelling, and I'm just like, either I'm like afraid of, for my life, and like it traumatized me just a tad, or it's like, nah, bro, not gonna do that. I fight back. So I appreciate about you. But yeah, I just wanted to first and foremost, I want to start this tradition with every single guest. Every person that I interview on the show, in my opinion, is a superhero. So obviously, you're one of my superheroes. And all superheroes have some sort of origin stories. You have Black Widow. Now you have Cassandra Rubino. And so if you can tell us, what is your origin story? And to tie that within my theme of Cultivate with Kate, using the imagery of gardening and cultivating our roots and such, what are your roots? And by roots I mean various foundations that make up who you are, like your upbringing, maybe your identity, your ethnicity, your gender, all of that. What is your origin story, Cassandra Rubino?
my origin story, I feel like I'm still figuring all of that out. I grew up with an Italian mother and American Italian. She's not from Italy, but and then a Black father. And, she always reminded me that, as much as we can love the people we love as far as like friendships and family, that I might grow up with some sort of adversity, or disadvantage. And I didn't really understand that because, you're a kid. And as I grew up, I grew up in a really hard town. So the town, everybody looked like me. So I didn't really feel like I was at a disadvantage because it was just kind of like where I grew up. And I grew up in a town called Brockton in Massachusetts.
Where is that near
And
Boston? Is it near again, my only context of Massachusetts is Boston. Where is Brockton?
it was like 25 minutes south of Boston.
Okay.
So, a lot of people, when they get gentrified out of Boston, then they end up usually going to Brockton. Brockton is considered the city of champions. So our sports teams are very very passionate, and any sport that I like, football, basketball, all the sports were pretty much like, oh, we gotta go play Brockton. And famous boxer Rocky Marciano is from there.
Okay, okay.
Uh, Marvin Hagler is from there, and you just that there's something special in the town, but there's also a lot of trauma and pain.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
it was actually back in the early 1900s. All of the shoes in the United States used to be made in Brockton, Massachusetts. So
Can you say that more?
I
All the what?
all the shoes, like any shoes, sneakers, dress shoes,
Oh,
they
interesting. I did
were
not know
all
that.
made. Yeah. So there is a there's a very big factory city in
Mm.
Brockton. Unfortunately, all of them are now abandoned, and I mean, life
Oh.
has gone on. That was over 100 years ago. So, I mean, there's a lot of specialness in my hometown, but it was a lot, again, there was a lot of disadvantages. But I kind of found my way through sport, and just the high, or the adrenaline that you get, the endorphins that you feel when you're playing a sport, and a team sport at that. Like, everybody is like working together to win this game.
Mhm.
um and then, as I kind of associated with getting older, everybody around me who was older was overweight, and I was just kind of like, I don't really, not that being overweight is like a body image issue for me. It was more of like, I associated that with being unhealthy.
Yeah.
Seeing a lot of my family members being suffering from heart attacks, and being on high blood pressure, and just things that I didn't feel like they were most healthy. And I was like, well, as a small child, I was like, how do I like, how do I cut the cloth differently?
Mhm.
How do I not perpetuate the same cycle of unhealthiness? And it wasn't necessarily just on my mother's side, but also on my father's side as well. So it was just like, I don't want to live that life.
Mhm.
Um,
How old were
Started
you when you
working out.
recognized that? When you had that awareness, do you remember how old you were?
I would say it was probably like 9 or 10.
Wow, that's profound. That's
And I was
incredible.
like, but it wasn't in a, and like, when I work with a lot of people who they have not trauma, but like, they have obsessive compulsiveness with certain things, like, or they have addictive personality. So they end up like being that person that's like, I have to work out, or X, Y, and Z.
Mm.
It didn't make me feel that way. It was just like, how do I go about this in a healthy way? Um, so I think, like, when I was like 14, I was a really bad math student. I'll tell you that right now. I would always just be like, I'm just gonna go to summer school. I don't care. And so one of the football coaches at my high school, he actually recognized, like, oh, you play on the basketball team, you play on the volleyball team. After summer school, why don't you hop in with the football team and like do their weightlifting and conditioning? So unfortunately, for 3 summers, I went to summer school. So, but fortunately, I would train with them every summer. And that was kind of where I learned a lot of my fitness regimen that I do now. How I train my clients now was based off of like, the old school weightlifting conditioning way from my high school football coach, even though I wasn't a football player. But um it was definitely something that I remember to this day, that it was like, okay, this is what I got to do. I know in the summer, volleyball starts in the fall, so I need to be ready. I need to have condition. I need to have like built some muscle.
Nice.
And Mr. Colombo, rest his soul,
Yes,
he definitely was like, come on in, like, and I used to bring like a couple of my girlfriends, and we would just, lift weights in the summer, and none of the boys cared. Nobody made fun of you. Um, it was just a super positive environment. And luckily, the school that I went to, they had really good equipment. We had treadmills and weights and barbells and all these things that I was exposed to at a very young age.
yeah.
So when I started personal training, I was 19. I was like, I want to help other people. Like, let's do this. So That's kind of like the start of the end of my childhood, really, in the sense of like not my innocence, but my like, I want to start changing people's lives.
Yeah, that's incredible. That is so neat. Thank you for sharing that. I think that is what you just shared. I feel like it's a rarity, because well, I did have some exposure to weightlifting when I was in middle school and high school, so I can relate on that level. But it sounds really interesting that you have somebody who, could see talent in you and could see that, you can train, you can condition, you can lift weights. And I feel like that, especially with women, at least I don't know about your experience, but with my experience, in my culture, it was almost like weightlifting is looked down upon or frowned upon in women, or like it's not feminine enough, or, and so can you talk more about that experience of how weightlifting like empowers you, especially from that young age?
I mean, I always wanted to do what the boys were doing. So
Mhm.
if boys are doing pull-ups, I'm doing pull-ups. If they're doing push-ups, like full range of motion, I'm doing push-ups better than you. If
Yes.
we're running and doing, 100-meter sprints, I'm doing that and I'm going to go faster than you. I always thought to myself, like, I didn't understand the difference between like why boys should be working out and being like muscular or building muscle and women couldn't.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is something that is still reigning true in society now. But
Right.
even like growing up, my mother would always, not in a mean way. I mean, it's just something that she probably grew up with herself too.
Sure.
Is
Right.
she'd always be like, "Oh, you look a man, or you're gonna do this, or you're gonna be bulky. You're gonna." I'm like, I don't. And honestly, I was like, I don't care. I
Yeah.
want to have nice arms, and I want to have, like a nice like chiseled belly. Like I not again,
Yes.
I didn't really struggle too much with my weight, but
Hmm.
I wanted to be like, if this kid over here can do 10 pull-ups, I want to do 10 pull-ups. And how do I do that? And what do I need to do? How much do I need to do of it? And that was like that just kind of like that made me not care about all these other opinions. And it wasn't like I don't feel like dudes or men or any of the like teachers that are male, they never really were like, oh, you shouldn't do that because you're a girl. Like
Hmm.
I remember my basketball coach would just be like, Cassandra's in the gym all the time. Like she's the one lifting weights all summer. And where the heck have you guys all been? And it was more of like the female influences in my life would always be like, oh, well, like, and I'm like, I mean, I've been doing it for a few years. I don't look like a guy now or a guy. Like, I don't understand that. But yeah, I think that it kind of goes across all cultures.
Hmm.
I don't know of any culture that's like, we really think that it's great that our women lift weights. I think that now we're coming into a world where I mean, it's still trying to get them to be okay with it, but I think that the younger generation is kind of like, oh, where the older generation is still like,
Right.
like my mom still tried to like mush down my trap muscles because she's like, oh, there's lots of knots. I'm like, no, it's muscle. She's like, you need a massage. I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. Thank you for sharing that part about just your experience, because I find it so fascinating. I remember when I started my CrossFit journey in 2013. That was my first exposure to CrossFit, and it was up and coming, and like all of a sudden you have explosions of CrossFit gyms, or boxes, excuse me, CrossFit boxes everywhere, right, in the United States. And you have the start of the paleo movement and the paleo diet and eating meat, and being lean on protein and all of these things. Talk to me about navigating as a vegan. Well, first of all, let's talk about your journey to veganism, and then I want to then get to the part where you, as a plant-based coach, navigating this world that is dominated by men and muscles and lean meats. So if you can share with us your journey to plant-based living.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of started off like right at the tip of when I started personal training. I used to train with this one girl at this like commercial gym. Like I would work out with her because she was the girl at the gym that was like super jacked, and I was like, oh, I want to look like that. And I a couple years prior to me becoming a personal trainer, I had torn my ACL, my MCL, and my
Mm.
meniscus all at one time,
Oh
and
man.
so I did gain some weight just because I wasn't working out, but I had an appetite of like 300 people. So I would just like eat, but I wasn't playing any sports. So I wanted, not that I was like idolizing her, but I was like, oh, I want to know how she does what she's doing. And she's the one who introduced me to like protein shakes and like,
Mhm.
I think she was like maybe 10 years older than me. So it was like, she would be like, oh, you should drink these protein shakes. And it was like at the beginning of that journey with her, she
Mhm.
would be like, she introduced me to vegan protein shakes.
Oh,
And
nice.
I wasn't opposed to it. I'm like, "Ew, that's weird," but I was like, "Oh, what's the benefit?" And she was like, "It's not made with any animals, and there's no dairy,
Mhm.
and all this stuff." So, what she made me tasted good to me. It was like she used rice milk. I can't remember the name of the protein powder, and then like some frozen berries. And I was like, "This is like amazing."
Yeah.
And so that was kind of where I started like buying a bunch of books, and like I bought this one book called the Cures to Diseases They Don't Want You to Know About by Kevin Trudeau.
Okay.
I saw it at like 3 o'clock in the morning on like an infomercial, and I was like, I'm buying this book. And I ended up finding it at like Barnes and Noble or something, and it was like a 400-page book. And I don't even really like reading that much, like for pleasure. I'm like, man, if I have to like learn something, then cool.
Sure, you're right.
So I read this book, and it was like all these things that I still to this day don't do. Like I don't use a microwave. I learning about how medication and pharma and like how the industry kind of makes you unhealthy, but like the FDA stands for the Food and Drug Administration, and that the food and the drug kind of coincide with each other. And I was like, like I was just kind of like, what is happening? What is this? And so I would continue to buy different books and like read about like apple cider vinegar, the health benefits of that, and like I started just buying like organic chicken and only meat that was organic. And I would go home. I still lived with my mom at the time, and I would be like, we're not doing this, we're not doing that, and like soda, we're not drinking juice, and we're not doing that. And so it was a very small push, and I have a video on my Instagram, and I talk about how it took me 10 years to go vegan, and I don't necessarily think that everyone should just like some people just stop smoking cigarettes and like cold turkey. Like I don't think that going cold turkey into veganism is great for everyone because you're so accustomed to what you culturally might eat or just like what you grew up or any of the stuff. And so I started off with like I would go I grew up Catholic, so I would go vegetarian for Lent.
Yeah.
And I would always be like, I'm not gonna eat any meat, but then it was like full pasta and cheese and like whatever. But I was like,
Right.
I didn't know. Like I just was like, okay. And then um my my ex-wife at the time had like one of the first smart TVs, and so with Netflix like built into the TV.
Right.
And that's when I started watching all these documentaries and like seeing how chicken was produced and how
Ah,
beef was produced and what they do to pork and like all this stuff. And I was like, skirt, skirt. I was like, what?
yeah, right?
So I was like, how can we treat these animals like this? Like I was like crying watching these things. And then
Mhm.
I was like, I'm not buying chicken anymore. I won't bring it in the house, but I'll eat like I would go to the restaurant and eat it, which is probably worse quality than buying it at the grocery store. But in my brain, I was just like, this is what I'm okay with.
Yeah,
Um, and so I stopped eating beef, and then like I was dabbling in vegetarianism, but every once in a while I would have a piece of fish.
sure.
Um, and then I moved to LA in 2016, and I was still eating fish,
Mhm.
but again, maybe once or twice a week, and everything else was solely just vegetarian. And then I just found all these other alternatives. Like yeah, it might be processed, but look how much process goes to handling meat.
Right.
So it might have been like a tofurkey sausage or, whatever type of like vegan meat. But I was like, whatever, I feel like I need some type of like, um, I need to feel satisfied, not through just eating vegetables and pasta and whatever. So watched another documentary called, I think it was What the Health. I watched What the Health in
Yes.
2017, and that's when I was like, I'm done. I'm absolutely done. I
Wow.
don't care. At that point, like I had already cycled off of so many things.
Yeah.
So I was like, it doesn't really matter to me because I didn't really need any of these things. Like I loved shrimp scampi, but like, did I really want to have shrimp anymore? Like bottom feeders of the ocean. Like,
Right.
did I want to continue to have eggs with all of the like? Then I just associated that with like chicken embryos, and I was like, nope, I'm not doing it. Um, and then just again, I was already not eating chicken and beef, so it wasn't the issue. I
Mhm.
just really am a pizza holic, so I
Love.
have like my strange addiction with pizza. And so I was like, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And like living in LA, like my friends that I made out here would be like, dude, there's this vegan cheese right here. And I'd be like, what? And
Oh.
then one of my friends brought me to this place. I think now it's in Hollywood, but
Ooh, what's
it's
it
called
called?
the
It's called what?
Cruiser
Cruiser.
Cruisers, yeah, and it's on Hollywood Boulevard, and she brought me there, and they have, like it's like going to a traditional, like, pizza shop, so they have, like,
Ooh.
pizza, they have subs, they have breadsticks, they got, like, buffalo wings, and I was like, "What?" I was so confused, and so I went in there, and I was like, "We can go to the vegan today." Like, if I can have pizza that has some type of, like, sensation of cheese in my
Mhm.
mind back then, I was like, I'm good to go. And so that was in 2017, August of 2017. So then I just continued my plan or continued my journey through veganism. And I don't think like I didn't really necessarily go for like I was going for health, but not necessarily weight loss. It was more of like I want to put the best things that I can put in my body that aren't dead flesh. I know that's kind of like
Right.
a lot to say, but
But it is what it is
um
though, right? It is what it is. Yeah.
so I just was like, I would rather eat this processed like cashew cheese than to have animal suffering in my body. Like and then like my cholesterol numbers, not that they were terrible, but I remember like when I moved out here, my doctor gave me like all of my records, and then like I looked at some of my cholesterol numbers from when I was 19 to 29, and it
Mhm.
was like I was like a 90-year-old person who had treated their body like crap when I was 19 versus 29. And it was like, my doctor was like, I don't know what you're doing, but just keep doing it. And she was cool. Like, she was very much about alternative health. So
Mm.
I would come to her and be like, this is what I'm doing. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not doing that. She'd be like, do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Not this. Whenever I told her I was like, I'm going vegan, she was like, okay. She wasn't like, oh, you really meat and blah blah blah. She was
That's
super
wonderful.
supportive. So, and she
That's
was
it.
old school. She's like probably in her 70s.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
incredible. That is that thank you for sharing that story too. Also, I need to check out Cruisers. Side note, happy belated National Pizza Day, which was 2 days ago. And so I don't know if you celebrated that
Any
day.
pizza.
Say
I
what?
had pizza. I said I didn't have any pizza, but I did have pizza on Friday. So I guess
Okay.
it was early.
It was yes. I went to Blaze Pizza and actually tried their new vegan cheesy bread. So now they're doing Daya cheese on their pizzas, so that's optional. So it was quite good. I enjoyed it. In fact, plug everybody. I made a video about that. Go check it out. Anyway, so yeah, thank you for sharing that journey with you. So you said that you started your vegan journey in 2017 after watching What the Health, great documentary, which I appreciate. Um, And, the fact that now we live in a world, well, you mentioned us living in Los Angeles, shout out City of Angels. And there are various options that are available, especially for those who are vegan. For me, I'm dairy sensitive, and so I try to eat vegan. And personally, I don't like cooking meat on my own, so it's so much easier to make vegan food, which I appreciate. Um, but yeah, I appreciate what you said about uh, yeah, basically just your preference is for eating alternatives and not flesh, and
Yeah.
so understand that completely. Although I will say and confess that, right now what I have going on is Monday through Friday, I eat as plant based as possible. And then on the weekends, if I choose to, then I would indulge in, meat or cheese, and dairy. But I'm learning that my stomach doesn't quite, well, my body, let's not just my stomach, my whole body, like it just doesn't react well to eating dairy or certain meats. And so I can understand how like plant-based eating is the way to go. So working on my journey to be more
Yeah.
plant-based. So and I appreciate what you were saying earlier, how you know we don't go turkey. I cannot speak. We don't typically go cold turkey, not gold turkey. And so I think, I mean, some people, I find it very fascinating. Some people can do it cold turkey, and I think that's cool, like good for you.
Yeah.
But I do think and appreciate your holistic approach of, and realistic, in my opinion, of gradually making a lifestyle change. So now, to go back to my earlier question, how do you navigate then this fitness world, where you hear people talk about keto, paleo, lean meats, and yeah, how do you navigate this space, being a fierce Black woman trying to preach to the world the good news of plant-based eating?
Honestly, when I started CrossFit, I started in 2012. So my continuing education of just like how food fuels your body for your workouts, say that 10 times fast. Fuels your body for your workouts. I think that I was like, oh, I get this now. Like, you need carbohydrates to fuel your body, you need protein to build muscle. But the gym that I went to, I love that gym so much. Like, if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have gotten a certification. But they did a lot of paleo stuff. And
Yeah.
so when I took the CrossFit certification, it was a lot of like the prescription was called the zone diet. It wasn't paleo. I don't know what happened in who, maybe it was like some of the more professional CrossFitters like went the paleo route, but it was zone diet is like, I can't really explain it now because I was like, this is too complicated, but it's like
Mhm.
you're eating certain, like your carbs, your proteins, and your fats in a certain zone. So it's like you count how many zones you need to have and like all this stuff. And I was like, this is too complicated. I'm not doing it.
Right.
But then I just tried to be more mindful,
Mhm.
and then I would try to just do like whole foods. And again, I was still eating meat at that time. But one of the owners of the gym, I still love him to death, but he, even now to this day, he still be in my DMs talking about you need to be eating meat, and I'm like, no, I'm not. Um, but I was like, I remember when I went to the gym that day and I saw the documentary. I think it was Food Inc. I saw, and I was
Yes,
like, oh
great
my
document.
god. I went in, I was like trying to tell everybody that was in the class. I'm like, guys, like you guys, you need to do this and blah blah blah. And he was like, no, Cassandra, you need to eat meat because blah blah. So then I was like, but the doctors on the documentary said. And so he was like, nope, nope, nope. And so I just was like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. Just like, if I didn't know that smoking cigarettes was bad, and then I found out it was bad, I would still be like, guys, 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 guys. And then people were like, oh, it's not that terrible. I'm still going to do it. So I was just like, I'm just going to navigate this in my own way.
Mhm.
And then even up to moving to LA, like a lot of CrossFitters that were coaches would be like, oh, the best way to lean out is to eat meat. And so one of my coworkers at the time, I was 183 pounds, 85 pounds. And I was like, I feel, even though I was still coaching CrossFit, I still could lift heavy. I could still do all these things.
Yeah.
My body fat wasn't that high. I just was like, I feel very heavy, like I don't feel good doing these workouts because like I just feel like blah. And
Mhm.
so I was like, maybe he can help me
Hmm.
in my pursuit of trying to lean out. And then he, I was at that time I was still eating fish once in a while. And so then he was trying to give me the zone diet. And I was like, no, like you need to eat 22 cups of spinach. And I was like, what? And he he was like, well, Cassandra, you really should be eating meats. And I was like, and I was so close. I was so close until to going me like, F it. If that's the only way that I can lean out, then maybe I'm like, I have to bite the bullet because I was like, I don't want to feel like this. I don't want, like, I had spent a lot of time yo-yo dieting like most of Americans, because it was like you try all these things, you do 30 days of this and 2 months of that and no carb this and protein shake that. And so at that point I knew what I knew, but I was like, I just don't know how to put it into play. A lot also with sabotaging through
Ah,
just mental health issues and being like, I'm sad today, so I want to eat pizza, or I'm pissed off today, so I'm gonna have, tons of pasta. So
mm,
I navigated a lot of that and always made excuses, but I was like, okay, I'm ready to not make excuses. How do I go about this?
mhm.
And the answer constantly to me was, you need to eat meat, you need to eat meat, you need to eat meat. And I'm like,
Mm,
I don't want to. Like, this doesn't make any sense.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think like I just kept trying to find other solutions. It was like
Mhm.
somebody else has to tell me something, somebody else has to give me a different answer.
Mhm.
Um, and so I started doing macronutrient diet, which is just kind of calculating your protein, carbs, and fats
Mhm.
geared towards your body and like what you need for whatever activity you're doing.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's kind of what that, when was that? That was April of 2017,
Mhm.
right before I went vegan. But that's when I was like, oh, and I could still eat pasta and I could still have pizza and I could still do all of these things. And it's not going to set me back. It
Yeah.
actually motivated me to be like, no, I actually am going to have this meal that I already made and not whatever else was at like a party or a restaurant that everybody was kind of digging in on.
Yeah. When did you
So,
learn about macro, or when and how were you introduced to, counting macros and all of that?
um, when I still lived in Massachusetts, my boss at my CrossFit gym back there, he would be like eating donuts. And I'd be like, how are you eating donuts? Like, he was like ripped, like, was a CrossFit team regional athlete. So I was like,
Oh,
dude, how is he eating donuts? Like, then I was like thinking, oh, this obviously is like just his body type. I always hear that, right? We're like, oh, it's just his body type. He's
yeah.
able to eat that because it's his body type. And so he would be like, I remember like going to the store once, or I'm like, I'm gonna go grab a coffee. Like, do you want anything? He's like, can you give me a chocolate donut? And I'm like, remember the last time I had a donut? Like, I'm so upset right now. And so I would talk to him and I'm like, dude, like, how do you eat donuts? Like, how are you eating fried chicken right now? How are you sitting here eating all this rice? And like, it was so perplexing to me. And then that's when it was 2015, I want to say.
Mhm.
And he was like, oh, doing macros. I'm like, what the heck is that? And so then he told me, he actually wrote my macro numbers for me, but I was not in a good place, not like I wasn't in a bad place, but I was like, I would just be like last minute trying to put food together, and I wasn't successful because I'd be like, okay, I want to have a bagel and egg and cheese sandwich, and I can have that because it's on macros, but then it would be like, I wouldn't be prepared to go to work. So I would not have any food with me. And so then I would end up at, a fast food restaurant or
Right.
whatever it was. So I was like, I I understood, but I wasn't implementing it the right way. Um, and it wasn't until 2 years later, and like it was like four of my girlfriends and I, we all were like, look, we're gonna do this. We're gonna be practicing macros in this way. We're all gonna do it together, and we all moved away. So it was all like we were all in just a group chat, and like we did it for 3.5 months, and I was like, this is the only thing that I've lost this much weight. Because normally I would be like, oh, I'm gonna go on this challenge, and I would lose like 2.5 pounds, and I'd be like, woohoo, and then I'd be like, let's go drink. um, and so when I did that 3.5 month challenge with them, like I remember like at the time I was bi-coastal and my ex-wife was still in Massachusetts. So I went home and she was like, I hadn't seen her in like 2 months. And she was like, holy crap. And I had lost like 30 pounds. And I was like, I don't
Wow.
even know. I just followed what this thing said. And like, I just went in and like every Sunday I would prepare my meals and like there was no excuse because they would be labeled. It would be like, this is your Monday meals, this is your Tuesday meals. And it was just like I do a lot of self-sabotaging. So I pinched a nerve in my neck that I couldn't even lift my arm. And
Mm,
I wanted to at that moment say, F it, I'm gonna get shrimp scampi because at the time I wasn't vegan yet.
sure. Right.
And so I was like, I'm just gonna do it. And then I was sitting on my couch and I was like, you already have like, yeah, you're in pain and like you finally got adjusted and you can finally like kind of like have some relief, but you already have your food in the fridge made.
Mhm.
So why don't you just eat it instead of making
Mhm.
this?
Mhm.
And so that was the pinnacle moment that I finally figured out that I was an emotional eater.
Mhm. Mm.
But
Yeah.
all to say, like, I I think that it was 2015 when I understood what they were and like how my old boss was eating donuts.
Mhm.
But it wasn't until 2 years later that I was like, okay, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And if
Right.
this thing is telling me that I can eat donuts and pasta and bread, then I need to figure out how this is going to work for me because these
Yeah.
quick fixes aren't working because then I just go off of it like the rest of us do and then just say, oh my God, I haven't had cake in 3 months. Like, give me all of it.
All the
Uh,
cake.
Right. And even to this day, I still practice macros and I still, because it keeps me, I know that I have emotional eating problem and I know that I overeat. I know that I've been 5'6" since I was 10 years old. So I just grew up really fast. And so I was constantly hungry.
Yeah.
And so, like, there is no filter. My brain and my stomach don't really like communicate with each other. So I could be in the kitchen, like, eating my seventh serving and my brain is like, girl, you better keep going, but my stomach is like, girl.
Girl,
So
yes.
I have to, in my mind, in my way of being accountable for myself is planning ahead. And then you have people who are like, oh, you have to be an intuitive eater and like you have to do these things or I'm never going to weigh anything ever again. It's like I don't have a addictive personality towards it that I'm like, if you said right now, like after Zoom, do you want to go check out cruisers? I'm like, cool, like I'll go and get a slice of pizza. I'm not gonna tell myself no. But I
Right.
know if I need to get ready for a commercial, then I need to be on top of my macros. And but I can still be like, I'm gonna have peanut butter toast with like vegan whipped cream or something, and I'm still hitting it and there's no like restriction.
Yeah. That's incredible. So cool. Cassandra, you're my role model, man. Just
Uh,
in many ways, in many ways. So, you mentioned your upbringing in Boston, and then you obviously are now based in Los Angeles. Can you talk to us about, why move from Boston to LA? I mean, you have the Patriots. Granted, Tom Brady ain't there anymore, but congratulations to TB. Congrats on the Super Bowl win. Anyway, so yeah, talk to us about your journey from Boston to LA. What led you here?
I've always wanted to be an actress since before I think the first time I saw Michael Jackson on TV. And I was
Nice.
like, I want to do that.
The
And
Wiz? Like Michael Jackson, like The Wiz, or like which Michael Jackson?
all of them, white,
Oh.
black, child, Jackson 5.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
I mean, maybe not all, not the accusation part of
Not
him,
the yes,
but
yes.
but I was very much like mesmerized by just like the awesomeness that it seemed to be on television. And I used to create variety shows with all the kids that I grew up with in my little like neighborhood. And I was Jesus in a play when I was in
Nice.
Catholic school. And I just was like, I'll be the black girl of Jesus in this white ass church. Like, let's go. And I think like my mother didn't know how to do it. Like she was like, I don't, there was no internet then. So it's like, I don't know how to put this kid into this realm. But now knowing that she could have just looked it up in the yellow pages, but that's neither here nor there. And so I always just kind of like, oh, that's not for me. Like, I'm not going to be able to do that because I didn't start as a child. I didn't start as a kid. I wasn't like the Hillary Duff that was,
Yes.
like she was a child actor, or, like Alyssa Milano or something like that, or
Right.
that I'm like, oh, this makes sense. Or Amanda Seales. Like Amanda Seales is an amazing person in, the world of just being a child actor to now being a comedian, actress,
Right.
activist. Like I just thought like, oh, if you didn't start being an actress as a kid, then it's just like, oh well. And then I went to high school with this guy. His name is Drew Fontiro. He lives out here now, and he left my my junior year of high school to move to LA. And
Mhm.
his parents were like, "Yeah, you're gonna go. You're gonna do this." And so he moved out here in 2004, and then like we were really close, and then I never really heard from him because he even says like he was too cool then. Like he just was like, "I'm moving to Hollywood," and so blah blah blah. And I like really missed our friendship, and like I never like we talked on the phone, but there was like before Facebook and all that stuff. And so it was probably around like 2010 I found him on Facebook, and
Mhm.
we started talking, but it was very few and far between.
Mhm.
And then it was weird, like one of my personal training clients back in Massachusetts, it was her son's like graduation from high school,
Mhm.
and she happened to be cousins with him.
Oh,
But I didn't know that at the time. And
okay.
so I'm in my car and I'm like, okay, I see a group of like guys get out of a car. And I was like, I'll just wait until they walk by because I didn't want to be like, I don't know, catcalled or whatever it was. Like, I just
Sure.
didn't want to feel like uncomfortable. So I'm like, I'll just wait until they walk by the car and then I'll get out of the car. And so it was funny. So I'm waiting and I'm like sitting like facing forward. And then I like looked to my left, and then it was like, we both looked at each other at the same time, and it was him.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like, "Oh my god," and I hadn't seen him since
Right.
2004,
Right.
and it was like random, like, "What?" He's like, "I'm going to this party over here." I'm like, "Me too." He's like, "How do you know these people?" I'm like, "Oh, she's my client." So then that whole night,
Mhm.
I think it was 2013, that whole night we just talked, and he was like, "You don't have to be 7 years old to be an actress. Like, you could be 58 and be like, I'm deciding I want to be an actress today."
Mhm.
And he's like, I always thought that because I used to take acting classes in high school. And
Yeah.
so like we talked all night about that whole like being an actress and moving to LA and like doing all this stuff. Um, and so I talked to my wife at the time. I was like, this is what I've wanted to do. And I was kind of dabbling already in like modeling, but it wasn't really doing anything. Like it was like, oh, this is like I was thinking I was gonna have my Brad Pitt moment, and like somebody was gonna like notice me, and like that was gonna be the thing. Um, and so we talked a lot. He was like, go into like acting classes, get headshots, do all of these things. And so that's what I did. And in 2013, I had said like I want to move to LA. Like I'd never been here before, and I'm like I'm moving there. So I tried as much as I could to like do extra work and like go on auditions and like do all these things. It was very nerve wracking. It is still is to this day. And then I had like a plan that I said, okay, I said to my wife, like, Our plan, I mean, our lease is gonna be up in July of 2016. Like, why don't we just go then? And so, like, I didn't really tell anyone because I didn't want to hear, because I come from a small, big town. It was like, I remember telling people, and they're like, "That's so unrealistic. Like, that's so silly that that's what you're gonna do." And I'm like, "What?" And I thought it was gonna be like, "Oh yeah, like you should totally do that." And it was like, that's kind of weird. And like, you
Yeah.
should get a real job. And like, what about a 401k? And like, what about this? And what about that? And like, you just need to go to school, and like, you just got married, and like, get a house and get kids. And like, why? That's like, you're not gonna do that. I remember
Hashtag
when
adulting, you know? Like, I said hashtag adulting.
I
Like,
was like, I don't. And I was never that person that really wanted to be at a desk. Like, I was like, I don't want to do this. This is giving me anxiety. I want to be out. I just want to live my life.
mhm,
And I want to get paid to do something that I like to do, not to, because I would be a trainer, but then I would also be working in an office, and I would be a trainer and then working a 9 to 5 somewhere else. And I would be a trainer. I never did it full time.
mhm,
And so it was so frustrating because it was like nobody was listening to me except for my wife at the time. She was the one that was like, "You should move, and we do go do that. We can go do that. We can go move." So then I went and visited Andrew in 2015, and then shortly thereafter in 2016 I moved here. Um, and I actually was telling some of my clients yesterday because I was annoyed with them, but I'm like, because just excuses of like why they can't do certain things. I'm like, listen, I literally moved into this apartment. I had no furniture. I
mm,
had the clothes that were in my suitcase.
mhm.
I had my Bernstein Bears coffee mug
Ah, gotta love Bernstein.
and my food scale. Had no I had 0 things. So I only could afford spending $30 for
Hmm.
groceries for the week, and like,
Oh, snap.
made it happen, and like, it's still to this day, like, even walking into this apartment now after I've worked, I'm like, I can't believe that I live here. I can't believe I live in this state. I can't believe that I moved away from home, because I was always that kid that was afraid of getting lost. Like,
Mm.
if it wasn't for GPS, I probably wouldn't have moved to California, because I just had a fear of being lost. But it was like, I don't want to work a 9 to 5. I don't want to be 98 on a rocking chair being like, I wish that I did this.
Mhm.
And I had so much aspirations of that. And it's like, fear fuels us to be fierce and like strong, and like, it does give you gray hair, but it's like, it's how else do you think any of these other people have made, who are whoever they are? Like, it doesn't matter if they're actors or if they're just like a really successful doctor or a really successful attorney or whatever their thing is, they had hardships. And like, I think that a lot of small town mindsets have this like understanding of like, you just need to just get a job. And I'm like, I don't want to though. I want to be paid to have fun,
That's awesome. It sounds like you're just
you know?
following that passion, like that hunger and that
Yeah.
passion. Like it's first of all, that is freaking courageous for you to be able to pack up your stuff. And at the time you mentioned you were married, and you said that your wife was based in Boston, and the sacrifice and the willingness to chase your dream. I just think that is super courageous of you to be able to go into the unknown and just do it. I think that's the difference between fear and courage, right? Like, to me, courage doesn't mean that there's no fear. Heck yeah, the
Right.
fear is there, but it's the action that you choose to pursue and to overcome that fear, to pursue your dream and overcome that fear. That's what I'm trying to say. And so,
Yeah.
wow, wow. Wow. And also, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around $30 a week of food in Los Angeles. Like, mad props, just saying. Mad props.
Yeah, it was a
Wow.
struggle. And I mean, I saved money. I had got a serving job.
Mhm.
I'd never served a table a day in my life, and I said, you know, the only way I feel like I could logistically save a ton of money from January to July, I feel like is to go and serve tables. And
Yeah.
so I was able to save like a ton of money, and I was like, why haven't I been doing this before now? Like, why didn't I start serving tables like in college? Like, I don't get why I started then. Um, but then, like, in Los Angeles to get a serving job is like, you are asking to be a rocket scientist. I'm like, why is there, why am I having to follow up like 97 times with you? Like, why are you not following up with me? Or I remember I lived in Studio City when I first moved here. Um, and I was walking up and down Ventura Boulevard near Laurel Canyon, and I literally was sweating because I wasn't used to the heat, like this
Right.
drastic heat. It was
Yeah.
dry, not humid.
Yes.
And so I was walking up and down, like giving my resume to any restaurant that I possibly could. And that was something that was nerve wracking for me too, because I'm used to just being like, I submit an application or I go online.
Right.
I'm I feel I'm so out of my element. Like, I don't know this stuff. So I didn't have any money. So it's like,
Ah.
even when I ended up unfortunately getting a divorce, I was like, crap, now I'm going back into the realm of like, I need to preserve and conserve. And so, yeah, I would go to the grocery store literally with my phone and I would be like, okay, this bag of pasta is 99 cents. This thing of, you know, what is it? A bouquet of broccoli, whatever it is.
Yeah, the florets.
Yeah, the florets. And I'd be like, okay. And then I would be like, okay, I have without tax right now, it's $30. Or and then I would say, okay, if it's 35, it's okay.
Mhm.
And so I lived very minimally at the time.
Wow.
And I just was like, I don't want, especially all the people that said I was gonna like move home or I was dumb for moving here. I'm like, I'm not moving nowhere. Okay. I will get my $30 groceries and I will be up in here.
Up
Um,
in yeah. Yes. Yes.
so
Claim this place. We're so glad to have you here in the City of Angels. Like such a blessing.
this expensive
Um
city of angels.
now, have you converted your sports team? Are you still like a Patriots fan? Like, what's your story? Like,
Of course, I'm never gonna be nothing but. I mean, I was annoyed with Tom Brady for sure. Um,
how attached were you to Gronk?
no,
Oh, okay.
not that I disliked him. I just wasn't like, I was like, damn, he's retiring. Okay.
Like, bye.
Anyways, right. Um, but then when I was like, oh, Tom Brady might leave. Almost I'm like, Tom Brady not leaving. Like, why would he leave? And then when like he's like, I'm just leaving. I was like he's gonna retire or and then they're like, no, he's gonna go to Tampa Bay, and then Gronk is gonna come out of retirement. I'm like, this mother flower, are you serious?
I know.
Yes. I probably watched like one game this year with the Patriots because I was pissed off. I was so mad. And so I mean, I watched the Super Bowl and of course I voted for Tom Brady and it was like, one of these people that I am friends with back home, like they had their twins in these shirts that said Tampa Brady Gronkaneers. And it was so cute.
That is very cute.
But yeah, I was kind of upset, but I mean, Jordan did the same thing, right? Like he
That's
left,
true.
went to the Timberwolves or whatever and played baseball and like
Yeah, and then journeyed back to the Wizards, right? Washington, right? Right? He played his
oh
time.
yeah, it was the Wizards, not the Timberwolves,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's the Wizards. I mean, and he made his Space Jam, classic. Good times.
So same thing, right? Same I'm sure a bunch of Chicago fans back then were probably like, "What are you doing?" But
Oh man. Well, I want to talk more about your creation of muscles by plants. So, like in your telling of your story, you mentioned that you coach in Boston. Dabbled in some coaching, and I know obviously that you coach at certain CrossFit boxes. But talk to me specifically about your fierce Black owned woman owned business, Muscles by Plants.
I also forgot to mention that I went to college for exercise physiology, which I just realized that when you were like, "Oh, you're a coach,"
Yes.
I was like, "Oh yeah." So I got my degree in that because it all stemmed back to, I wanted to help people, and I was gonna originally go to school for athletic training, but then I was advised to change my major, which is fine. And so yeah, the start of Muscles by Plants was the start, or the middle to end of the lockdown from the pandemic,
Yeah.
because I was getting a divorce,
Mhm.
I needed every cent of every penny to stay in this apartment, right? So I was like, I need to be able to afford to live here, but I also didn't want a roommate because I just felt like I already had roommates. I just
Right.
like to have my own spot unless it was somebody that was like sharing my life with. So
Mhm.
um I did think like I need to do something else, because when the pandemic hit, I was probably coaching like
Mhm.
40 hours a week
Oh my
at
goodness.
different gyms. And so
Yeah.
Monday through Friday, I would get up every effing day at 4:30, 4:45.
Oh, that's
And I'm not a morning person. Like, people
me
think that
neither.
there at in the gym, that they're like, "Oh, why aren't you?" I'm like, shh, 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 shh. It's too early to talk that loud or that frequently or that excited. Like, let's just wait till 8. Um, and so I definitely was like, there has to be something else. So the pandemic, as horrible as it has been for very vast amount of families and people and all of that stuff, it was hard because it was when they were like, okay, like when the governor and the mayor of California was like, we're gonna be shutting down, like the first state that did it.
Mhm.
I was like, this is amazing. Like, I get to sleep. Because if anyone knows me, they can either find me eating pasta or asleep. Like, I would rather go to sleep than do a lot of things. Like, I would rather go to sleep than go to the bar until 3 a.m. Like, I just my mother always said, like, from the time that I went home from the hospital, I was asleep. Like, I never woke up. I never was a fussy baby. So I'm like, still to
Wow.
this day, I still want to sleep. So when they were like, we're gonna be home for 2 weeks when nobody's going anywhere, I was like, cool. Well, I'm gonna sleep. And like, people who live here don't necessarily know what it's like to have a snow day. And so it felt like a snow day,
Mhm.
but it's so much that like they have to tell you that you're not going to school, and you're so pumped because you're like, I'm going back to sleep. So midway through the quarantine, when they were saying that stuff was starting to open up, I had a major panic attack, like
Oh.
a major one, like hyperventilating, like call my therapist, like
Mhm.
need to be consoled. I did not want to go back to that schedule.
Mhm.
I was like, I cannot do this. And like, I left personal training like as a sole source of income, mostly because like I didn't like feeling like a used car salesman,
Mhm.
um, by hustling and going up to people on the treadmill being like, "You look like you need a personal trainer." So I went into the CrossFit world just because it was like it was just like a community, and I didn't need to really sell anything because it was like, this is a great place to be.
Yeah.
So my now boyfriend, I know I said I had a wife and now I have a boyfriend, but we live in 2020,
Mhm.
or now we live in 2021.
Anyone, yes. Trying to get used to that.
Right. Um, so he was like, because I was like, I'm hyperventilating. I don't want to do this. I don't want to go back.
Mhm.
And he was like, well, maybe he said he's found something on TikTok that like you can work from home. I'm like, what? And like, he's like, you can sell things and you can do this. So I went into like lots of webinars. I went to lots of webinars in May and June, just being like, what should I do? What can I do? What should I do? And I like, previous to the pandemic, was like trying to work for this company
Mm.
that did online personal training, and like they were saying that they were going to find you clients and all this stuff. and they didn't find me one freaking client.
Mm,
And then it was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do all this work, right? For somebody else.
mhm,
So then I think it was like in August, we had already gone back to work. I was still on unemployment, but I was like, this is going to end soon. And I'm not working 40 hours anymore. How am I supposed to live? How are we supposed to survive?
mhm,
Um, and so I had still in the works. I'm still trying to create a product, but in the midst of creating the product or having the idea of the product, I was like, I need to buy a domain. Like, I need to have something to like, then that can be my company name. Or even if I don't use it, I can sell it because then, the equity goes up from buying
mhm.
some sort of like name. So as I was buying the name for my product, I was like, what if I just do online personal training? And as I said that out loud, it was like all of these like ads for like, you could be a personal trainer online or whatever. You could create your own business.
Mhm.
So I went and hired some consulting company, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
And it was like just opened my eyes to like all these people that are influencers.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, I thought Instagram and Facebook like paid these people. And it was like, no, they grew their following just for being who they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've had Instagram since 2012. I've had Facebook since the beginning of time. And I always share everything. I've had juicing pages where I went through a phase where I was juicing all the time. I've had my personal training Facebook business page since 2013, but I never really like monetized on it because I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so it was really like, oh, these people have, or they're called influencers, are people who are just like over time just showing how whatever their niche is, like even if it's just like they love to groom dogs, like they did it over and over and over and over again to people like enjoyed and loved them for their personality and like what they were about. And I was like, oh, and so that's how Muscles by Plants started, was just like finally being like, it was like a light bulb went off. And I was like, if I can personal train people, I've been doing this for 14 years now.
Mhm.
Why can't I do that from here, from the comfort of
Yeah.
my own home, and still being able to influence people and give people my knowledge in a bigger radius than just the city of Los Angeles? And personal training is very like rewarding, but it's also very much like if you have someone who lives in like Whittier, you don't want to then make them drive to you or you drive to them and then you waste your whole day just being like, oh, well, now I'm going to be here all day. I might as well try to find other clients. It's just like, it was going to put me back into where I didn't want to be, which was constantly awake.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and so now when I started Muscle Supply Plants, it was like I didn't understand. I didn't know that so many people were like this. I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm all that, but like so many people were like, oh, I've been waiting for you to do something like this. I'm like, what? Because like I said, like I'm always like making food on my Instagram, or
Ooh, I
I'm
love it.
doing my workouts, and I'm always like just talking trash about whatever it is, like because I don't really care. Like I just am like, this is who I am. So with that, like I really launched it in like October, and by now, like February, it's February 11th. Like I don't know. I mean, you are where you are supposed to be when you're supposed to be there, but I was like, damn, I wish I knew now what I know now back then.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it started not that long ago. It started,
Wow.
and I was like, this is amazing. And I have clients in like Alabama, in New Jersey, in San
Incredible.
Diego, in freaking Chicago, in Boston. And I'm like, this is, I don't even understand. Like people that have been following me, like I was in a BuzzFeed video And like people were like, "Oh my god, like I saw you in this BuzzFeed video. I want to train with you." I'm like, "What?" I was in the BuzzFeed video like for 2 minutes talking about veganism.
Yeah.
Uh,
Was that the video? I think I saw that video where you made a cameo. It was a guy from our gym. Oh, what's his name?
Troy.
Troy Brady, right?
Yeah.
And and he was doing a challenge for 30 days of like trying to be vegan, and you're like his consultant or something like
Yeah.
so cool, by the way.
Yeah, it was like, and it was funny because I was like, man, we did so much. Like I did so much of like vlogging with him that they only edited it like to that I was in it for like 2 seconds. I'm like,
Oh.
I was at Trader Joe's, I was at Whole Foods with this mofo. Like what happened? But yeah, I mean, I think it was like the light bulb went off and like I think that if the pandemic didn't happen for a lot of people, in a sense of not the pain and the suffering, but like more of like the mental health of sitting in your own brain and being like, what is life? And
Mhm.
we're not going out every Sunday for brunch or Fridays for birthdays. Like we were forced to be sitting in our own brain.
Yeah.
And I mean I spent a lot of time. I'm Pisces, so I spend a lot of time crying anyways, but I'm like, that was like, oh, well, like there was a lot of like aha moments through the pandemic, through the lockdown, I should say, because we're still in the pandemic. But
Right.
I was like, I don't know why I've waited this long or how I didn't see this before, or all these things kind of came to fruition. But I mean, I still feel like I still have so much room to grow with Muscles by Plants.
Hmm.
But it's kind of just like the movement of my whole life is like I've always wanted muscles. I've always wanted to be one of like the girl that was better than the boys. Um and now I can be better than the boys by having Muscles by Plants.
Yes. We celebrate that. We celebrate just the success and the launch of your business. And so I'm just so excited for you to be on this journey and to spread, like I said, I just like the word good news, spread this good news of how plants are good for you, how, we don't need to be dependent on animal products as much. And it's just, better for your body, your mind, just for everybody holistically.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I try to do as much. It's not just about food for me. Like my hair care stuff is, animal free. It's not tested on animals, and it's for Black women, and it's a Black owned company.
oh, what's the name of it? Can you please share?
It's called actually Shea Moisturizer. Shea
Oh,
Moisturizer is the
yes.
and like I actually just found like in a when people give you like not random gifts, but they give you gifts of like candles and stuff like that. I was in my linen closet the other day and I was like, what is this? And it was like Shea Moisturizer lip balm, but it was like Shea Moisturizer vegan lip balm. And I was like,
Ooh,
and I was like, look at you, Black owned company, like getting it in with, just not having animal stuff in your stuff. And
yeah.
even like makeups, like people don't realize like there are not just like tested on animals, but animal products in makeup. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's not it like leather and like certain fabrics. And um, I literally am like in love with animals. Like I think that animals are the best things on the planet. Like they give so much love unless they're aggressive, but usually they're aggressive because they also go through trauma.
Right.
Um and so like I love like I'm always like, "Oh, your dog's aggressive? That's cool. Can I pet him still?" Like I'm like I would rather be like my arm bit off and just to see if like maybe he has a connection with me than to like not like I've had birds, like I've had fish, I've had, I my dream one day is to have a house big enough to like have a cow. Like I want to have a cow as my like large dog. Like I think that they are the happiest little animals when they're treated the way that they should be treated. Um and it's just like how can we like differentiate like these animals are food and these animals are like our friends and our family, when all animals have feelings and all animals like want to feel loved, and like you can just see that through the slaughterhouses, like they don't want to be like dragged into this room and like, and it's like you're eating fear and you're eating like just like their own like last thing that they felt. um and I was actually telling my mother the other day, like all animal products have cholesterol in them, every single one. You could eat plants for days and not get 1 ounce of cholesterol. Even when they're like, oh yeah, like olive oil, avoid oils and blah blah blah. Like no oil has, except for like lard, has cholesterol in them.
Yeah.
So it's like people, my mother, like her chin drops when she was like, wait, there's no cholesterol in plants? I'm like, no, it's all from animals. So it's like, and then people say like, oh, we're gonna die anyways. It's like, well, I'd rather die like living my best, healthiest life and be 98 and like still be chilling in my house and like being able to make my own sandwiches and like, and maybe I'm not driving, but I'll still be able to take care of myself, you know?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Um, this is a great segue. I do want to touch on, health and education and accessibility. It sounds to me like, sure, we use the title of coach, or fitness expert and such, but I think you are an educator, and you do a great job of making information accessible to the people. So thank you for doing that. But I do want to touch on health and education accessibility and the relationship with health disparities that we see within the United States, specifically within Black communities, and others that are considered as people of color. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it goes back down to like the Food and Drug Administration, in
Mhm.
my opinion, and how also how wealth is distributed
Yeah.
and how it's easier to buy a honey bun than it is to buy like a bunch of bananas.
Hmm.
But then like it goes back into the school systems, and then the school systems not teaching children how to eat properly and fuel their body, and like things like the freaking food pyramid that
Yeah.
like they don't really educate anyone on anything, and like the bottom has like is full of grains, which yeah, it's okay to have carbs, but the bottom should be full of grains, it should be full of fruits and
Mhm.
vegetables.
Right
uh,
on. Right on.
and I think that like even me growing up, like my I grew up predominantly with my mother, and I did eat a lot of Italian food, but there was also like uh, just junk food in the house all the time. Now what I practice with my clients is that they can still eat stuff like Oreos and stuff, but it was like that shouldn't be the main food group that's in the house. And I think that when you go to schools and you let children kind of make their own decisions, they were gonna pick the Oreos or the cheeseburgers and the hot dogs and all of that. They're not gonna like, yeah, well, we have salads for them. It's like they're not gonna go and be like, you know what, I'm feeling the salad right now. And then you have like in inner cities with predominantly people of color, of any color,
Mhm.
and they are unhealthy. They are at risk for diabetes. They are at risk for like um heart attacks and just like obesity and all of those things, but like they're not thinking of it as like, oh, this is unhealthy. They're thinking about it as like, I need to feed my children. And if they advertise things like the dollar menu on TV, and like if I can feed my kid for $1 versus like let me go and try to make them this whole meal of fruits and vegetables and all that stuff that's I'm gonna end up spending way more money, then of course the parent is gonna be like, okay, well, this dollar menu is where we need to go. Which again is unfortunate. It's unfortunate to think that people of color are put in these like food jails, if you will, like food
Mhm.
education jails where they just don't know. And like the amount of Black women that I speak to on calls to try to educate them and like let me work with them, um, the amount of information they don't know is like, it's, I mean, obviously it's not their fault, but it's like so overwhelmingly sad.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, they've made it to whatever age that they're at, and they think that certain things are okay for them to eat, which again, through a macronutrient diet in moderation, it is okay.
Mhm.
But just like some people make it all the way to their 40s and they don't understand that their body is made up of like 80% of water and they don't replenish their body with water. Um, and it happens in a lot of inner cities. And like, I can tell too by just like the way that their skin looks, the way that their hair looks, that they're malnourished. And it's just like, it's like a goal
Mhm.
of society to keep people of color not knowing these things, because why would you want to have them educated? Why would you want to have them understanding how to be healthy? Because then, like, especially in the Black community, it's like you don't want the Black people to be uplifted and rise up. You want them to be minimal, and you want them to not know anything. You want them to keep treating themselves like they don't know anything so they don't rise above. And I think like even now with COVID, like it's even more of a problem because so many people have lost their jobs. So many people of color and all cultures of color have lost their jobs. And like I find it annoying that it's like the headline is like people of color or the Black community suffers from COVID more.
Mhm.
They're more susceptible to COVID than any other race. And I'm like, why do you think that is? It's not because of our genes. It's
Mhm.
because we're out in these streets having to work.
Mm.
It has nothing to do with like Black people are different than Asian people versus white people versus Mexican people. It's that the people of color are still having to go to their jobs.
Yeah.
They aren't being able to go and work their fluffy job in their home and get a desk and like have all these opportunities.
Mhm.
So it's like, of course that, Black people have the highest amount of COVID because they have to go to work.
Mm.
And they had to go to work throughout the pandemic. And like, then they have poor food choices because you have made it in an educational system to keep people of color unknowingly misunderstood on how to fuel their body. And then
Mhm.
yes, it's okay to every once in a while like have an indulgent moment and like have fun food and like whatever. But
Yeah.
if the child's choice is to have a liter of high C versus like, they're dehydrated and they need to have water, like that's not always the parent's fault if
Mm.
they're not being informed. And like the amount of people that I tell, then like I
Mhm.
didn't know any of this stuff. Like I used to drink juice thinking that that was a better option. Like not juice that I juice, but like I would have some ocean spray versus
Right.
soda. I thought that was healthier. You know what I mean? Like I just thought that that was the difference. And if you could look at pictures of me when I was 19 versus now, like my skin is different, even though I'm older. My hair is curlier. How
Mhm.
is my hair curlier? Like that doesn't make any sense to me because I'm not processing my hair. I'm not putting shit in my hair.
Mhm.
I'm putting more plentiful whole foods in my body.
Mhm.
And it's like you get looked at weird in the Black community as like wanting to be like, it's like I love seeing so many Black vegans on Instagram.
Yeah.
You get made fun of being like, oh, you're gonna eat that white people shit. And it's like, it sucks that it like healthy means you have to be white.
Mm.
And that's something that's like probably been like, yes, let's make it seem like that white people only have the opportunity to be healthy.
Mm.
And so it gets passed down to be like, oh, well, like, you want to be healthy because you think you're better than everybody. And it's like, no, I would rather continue to teach. And that was another reason why I really wanted to not one of the reasons, but in my path of being an actress, I was like, I can't wait to be a known actress so I can use my platform to
Mhm.
educate people about food.
Yes, yes.
And I was like, I can't fucking wait to do that. I can't wait to be like, hey guys, thanks for the award. But I just want to say that you need to make sure that blah, blah, blah. And then like social media happened. And that's why I was like, I missed an opportunity that I'm now taking advantage of now. But I think it sucks. I think it sucks that people of color in this country get the crap end of the stick when it comes to understanding how to be able to fuel their body, not just because they need to have muscles and like whatever, but to feel satisfied. Then, like like I said, I had $30 a day or $30 a week eating food, and I still was eating enough food to um, still be healthy.
Wow.
So it's just, I mean, it is very frustrating because they want you to not think that they want you to think it's a people of color problem when it's like it's not. It's like you guys want us to be misinformed. You want us to think that we need to buy a honey bun versus bananas in order to make it buy and feed our kids.
Yeah. I definitely like just want to piggyback off of what you said, clearly there is it's a systemic issue, right? It starts with how things are set up. Um it, some people use the word like the system is broken, the system is broken. No, I think the system was built that way to malfunction since the get-go. And so, thank you for bringing that to light and for your insights, just because, I think of, even if you think of like cities, there are certain cities where food isn't as accessible compared to other places, and I think they're called food deserts. And um, sadly, areas where there are food deserts are predominantly low income, and there is correlation with low income living and people of color. And so it does stink that that there's still that issue in 2021. And with that in combination with what you mentioned, like the limited education and knowledge, and I mean, it can be traced back in time and in history, right, to during days, sadly, of slavery, and then segregation and zoning laws, and then people living in certain neighborhoods and then not having as much access to things compared to other people. It's still a prevalent issue. And I'm glad that it's now talked about more, and it's still an issue.
Yeah.
Um, and so, again, I'm just so glad that you, Cassandra, are using your platform through Muscles by Plants, through your Instagram, to educate all of us about the beauties of clean eating, that can be affordable, that it is not impossible. Like, anyone can do it, of course. And so I'm so grateful for this conversation. So I want to now transition to how do you self-care? Like, how do you, I mean, obviously you work out and stuff, but like, how do you take care of your holistic self to cultivate yourself?
I take lots of naps. No.
Hey, all good, all good. We love naps.
Um, I don't know. Like I don't really subscribe to a lot of like, oh, I gotta make sure. Like a lot of people meditate, and a lot of people like they do certain things that might be mainstream, I guess. But I honestly, self care to me is like really just being around either my mom, being around friends, journaling. Um, I do I do find like just turning off is important for me too. Like I will just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna binge watch a show and like I need to be okay. Then I'm spending most of this day in my pajamas and like
Yes.
it's cool for me. Like I think like depending on the season, like going to the beach is cool and like just chilling, listening to the ocean.
We're
Uh,
blessed with that for sure. So thankful.
yeah, and I mean, I don't have like a really big like routine of self-care, but I know when I get overwhelmed, it's time for me to be like putting my phone down, or I'm not going to go to so and so's birthday because it would just make me feel even worse than I feel now, or whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
So my self-care is really just listening to my body and being like, hey, so I either have to not work out today, or I need to like just veg out and like watch. Right now, my vegging out is like catching up reruns of Family Matters.
Nice, great. My fiance loves Family Matters. Loves.
I'm like, oh, I just so many things that I'm like, I watched that as a kid that I was like, oh, I didn't really remember that. Or
Ah.
so yeah, I mean, I don't have like a traditional like zenny place of self-care, but it's mostly being like, no negative energy, no bad vibes. Let
Mhm.
me put some eucalyptus in the shower and some
Ooh, okay.
some put a nice candle on and like if it's winter, snuggle up in the blanket and like sometimes it's like I'm getting some pizza.
Yes, always, always.
So yeah, I mean, I think that I realize that I have high anxiety and I didn't really realize that I had anxiety. I'm like I thought anxiety was for other people.
Mhm.
And so I think that in my adult life, I was like, and that probably like late 30s or late 30s. I'm not even in my late 30s. In my late 20s, I was like, oh, I think I suffer from anxiety. So I know that when I get to that point, then I'm like, I'm done peopling.
Mm,
Spent a lot of time peopling.
mm.
Like, I'm not
Love.
I'm not answering my phone. I'm not texting you back. I
Mm,
love you and I'll text you back tomorrow. But
yeah.
I just need to airplane mode my phone and like just watch some Steve Urkel.
Yes, yes. Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's time for speed round fun questions, okay? Now, there's no right or wrong answers, obviously. This is a round where I just throw random questions at you, and you have to take, between 5 to 10 seconds to answer. Are you ready?
No? No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, we'll start with the easy stuff.
Okay.
Favorite color,
Purple.
favorite movie.
Selena!
Oh, me gusta. I love that. J Lo does a good job. She did a great job. Um, favorite food,
Pizza.
of course, of course. Um, first thing you do when you get home on a day that's rough, what do you do?
I honestly just lay horizontal on the couch.
Love, love it, love it. Um, favorite 90s artist growing up, because you and I are, like millennials. And so, like, name that favorite artist of yours in the 90s.
Oh my god, there's so many, but I would probably at the top of my head right now that is coming to my tongue is probably Aaliyah.
We stand Aaliyah. We stand Aaliyah. Rock the Boat is like the song that I listen to, and I'm still not okay. I'm not
I
okay.
know.
She's gone. Not okay. All right, this last question is out of the blue, but I got to give credit to one of my former colleagues. Shout out to you, Molly. She used to ask this question to our students. And again, there's no rules. Okay, there are no rules to this answer to this question. The question is: you're a piece of Lego and you're stuck in a blender. How do you get yourself out?
I'm a piece of Lego.
Yeah, stuck in a blender. How do
like
you get yourself
later
out?
on.
There's no rhyme, rule, or reason. I'm just giving you that. I'm giving you the creativity to explore. How do you get out of that blender?
I asked Kate for help. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, I can help you.
There's a really interesting question, Molly.
I know,
Uh,
Molly.
that is like a brain worker. But I feel like I would try to like keep hitting the side of the blender until I got to um the edge of the counter. Hopefully it's going to be in the sink, and so I will wedge myself from outside of the blender, and then I'll be in the sink ready to get escape the blades of despair.
Ooh, way to beautifully put that and way to articulate that. That's creativity. That is problem solving. That is incredible. Well, thank you for playing that round of speed round fun questions. My last question for you for the evening is, what advice do you have for our audience? General advice can be anything.
I would say it's important to care about your body.
Hmm.
It's important to care about what you put in your body.
Hmm.
It's important to move your body. You don't have to be a ripped and chiseled athlete in order to have self love for yourself, but you should want to be on this planet for a long time in a way that puts you in the most optimal health for you. And don't just go with the norm that you're supposed to eat certain things or you can't live without certain things, because there's so much more to us than just what we put in our body. But I always think like I used to I used to teach, well, I used to work at my old high school, and like whenever I was in the in-house suspension room and they would just be kids just like obviously going through a lot of trauma, I would be like, I wish that I could just take you
Mm,
and put you on the outside surface of the earth.
mm,
Just hold you there like how how what was his name? Marlin from Finding Nemo, the dad put the crab outside the water when he was trying to find his son. I'm like, I just want to put you on the outside surface of the earth and
mhm,
to have you understand how minimal your life really is,
mm. Yeah.
and how whatever you're going through, you'll get over and you'll work through it and you'll overcome.
Mhm,
Um, but it's important to understand that we are more than just where we are in the current place that we are, and
yeah.
that we are here to serve someone in something in some way.
Mhm, mhm,
And we need to care about what we're putting in our bodies, how we're treating our bodies, because that ultimately is how we're treating the earth.
mm, mhm,
And it sounds very dramatic to somebody who might be hearing this for the first time and not understanding it, but like we aren't here just for PS5s and iPhones and
Preach.
Jordans and all of these things. Like we were here to learn a lesson. Like I feel like this is probably like my fourth life or something. Um and like we are here to grow our souls so
Mm,
we can learn some things so our souls can move on to the next life. So I would say just read a book, and not in a mean way, but just like read to know, and know that you need to be here to serve some other purpose, and life's going to be hard, but we have to make choices that are going to benefit our soul and benefit the people around us in a non no materialistic way.
oh,
Stuttering Stanley over here, but
it's okay. We just love you and your authentic self. And just thank you so, so much.
thank
Again,
you.
thank
I think
you
it's
for,
so awesome that you are doing this. I think that very brave to start this because it might seem overwhelming and it might seem scary and it might seem like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I don't know. There's so many, better people out there that have so many followers or whatever it is. And you might have this sort of like imposter syndrome going on, thinking like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Um, and just know that these people who you might admire, that you're kind of like piggybacking off of, like someone like Oprah, if you will, like
Love her.
she was fired from her, newscasting job, and it's like, look at where she is now. So
Mm,
I think that it's brave of you to be
mm,
where we are in the world of like social media and being like, you know what, I'm gonna do my own thing, and I'm gonna project all of the stuff that I have in my brain, my soul, and like put it out there to help in educate people in all different ways.
mm. Thank you so, so much, Cassandra. And
Welcome.
thank you for your just for being who you are and for blessing this earth with your energy, with your good vibes, with your caring and compassionate heart. We stand Cassandra. We're all let's snap and clap to Cassandra. I wish I have again a clapping track, but this is my
Right.
natural clapping track. And so, thank you once again. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Cultivate with Kate, Cultivating Conversations with Cassandra Rubino, founder of Muscles by Plants, and Cassandra, who's saving the world through food and fitness. Thank you again. And everyone, have a marvelous, fantabulous night or day, or whenever you're listening to this. Just have a great time.
Yes.
All right. Bye, everybody.